Hey guys, welcome back again to Elevate Procurement Dialogues. I'm your host, Lerato Sebata. In today's episode, we have Noluthando Ngqandu, who is the head of claims and procurement at Bright Insurance Company. Noluthando, welcome to today's episode. How are you?
Thank you, Lerato. I'm well, thanks. And how are you?
I'm okay, thank you. How have you been?
I'm well, keeping busy. So we're busy with our final quarter results. So we're just busy with just measuring and how we perform from the quarter.
Yeah.
There's a lot of excitement in the business. We just went through a bonus and reward period in increments. So there's a lot of energy in the business. Hey, people are
happy. People
are happy.
And you are the most popular person right now in your team.
Like I'm like the lady who walks on water at the moment. So yeah, I can't do no wrong to my team.
Wow. Can you just share just a brief, how your journey started, your career, and how you landed in procurement?
I landed at Bright 5 years ago as the head of procurement. At the time, I had a team of 8, and my team 5 years later has grown to 73, including I've just acquired now quite a big team.
Sure.
So I've acquired a few teams along my journey, and I now manage 4 teams within the business. So procurement is split into 2 for our business. We've got claims, which is focusing on the insurance side, and then we've got the corporate side. And I also look after the company's scorecard from a BE perspective. Yeah.
That's a very big portfolio that you handle.
So I do quite a lot of things, and also just the claims side of the business as well. So we call them attritional claims. So it's your high volume claims that we handle. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll get into that. That's very interesting, in fact. Right. So what I wanted to talk about today, especially looking at your journey, it is strategic procurement leadership.
Sure.
Right? You have handled a couple of leadership roles as you've moved around, right? From the time you said, yes, I'm going for it.
Yeah.
It is a little bit difficult for a lot of females, but I'm going to speak on behalf of some of them, that just become confident in taking these roles.
Yeah.
You seem very confident. Is it because of how you started your career, or is just organically you're someone who just goes for it?
I think beginning of my career, I've sort of been attracted into male-dominated spaces. And you have to grow. They say you grow a pair to firstly have a voice and to be confident in the voice that you have. So along your journey, from a strategic perspective, there's certain tools you have to have a toolbox. As any person, I think as females, your toolbox has got to have like secret compartments in there that you use as you're getting into the different spaces, because it is difficult to walk into a room and of subject matter experts, and you sort of walk in, and if you even your demeanor, people look at you and they judge you by that. So I've sort of had to look at it at different tools. So I think for me, I sort of made a conscious decision to be a very self-aware person. So I am very much aware of my challenges. I'm very self-aware of where my areas that where I believe I excel, and I sort of worked on the areas that I believe are challenging for me. One, fun enough, I love speaking to people, but I'm very shy.
Really?
I am very shy.
You hide it very well. I must say.
So, but it comes with the perks of the job that you have to talk to people. But it's a very exhausting thing for me.
It is.
But what I also figured out is that you also, as you get into spaces, you rely as you become into senior leadership roles, you have to rely on your team.
That's true.
And you have to attract people that know more than you in order for you to grow as a leader. So if I walk into spaces, I take that experience of my team along. I also think I'm an avid reader, so I try and read as much as I can and absorb as much as I can.
Okay.
I hate not knowing. So you get into a room.
I like that. You're very inquisitive.
I'm very inquisitive. So you sit there and somebody
mentions
something. I don't want to be embarrassed. And then somebody just decides, because I'm in I lead a team of panel people that are trained in panel beating, and they start talking about vehicle parts.
Yeah.
And I go, wow. Now, obviously, with these nails, I cannot repair any car.
True.
But you've got to sound as if you at least have to know what they're talking about when they're talking about a fender bender and things like that. So I do start out myself with people that know a lot more than me. And I think as a leader, strategically, you have to embrace that and use that as one, as I mentioned, your compartment, your secret compartment in your toolbox.
So at what point did you realize that I am actually now into leadership?
My team leader had fallen ill, and she decided not to return to work.
Okay.
And there was a MENCO meeting that she had to plan for. So normally, as you do, you prepare stuff and you give it to your manager, and your manager does whatever they need to do. So I wasn't aware that she was actually going through a IR process.
Okay.
And she then said, "I'm ill, until further notice." So her boss then said, "We need you 9 o'clock.
Step up.
Get ready. We need you to present on behalf of the department."
Sure.
So fortunately, I had sort of been helping in putting the deck together, so I sort of knew what was in the deck. And I had no time to prepare. It was like, I think 15 minutes before the meeting.
And you were just thrown in.
I was just thrown in, and fortunately, as I said, I'm blessed with the gift of the gab.
Yeah.
So I like throwing in jokes when I get nervous. So I looked at the room and I looked at familiar faces, and I just focused on the face that I thought was friendlier, and that was it.
And that's how it just started.
That just started.
And I'm sure they did not realize, or sure, there's been so much potential in this lady, and we did not even realize that this is carrying wealth of knowledge. And
exactly. So I said that's one of the masters I had to train was the confidence aspect.
Yeah.
So I think somebody had noticed something in me, and I think it just happens that opportunity came. You know, you always hear this notion that when the opportunity knocks, you've got to be ready for it.
True.
I'm a true believer of that.
I am also a believer of that. Yeah.
And I had sort of not knowing that I was actually preparing myself for that role, and I sort of, I think on a personal level, sort of like I said, like conversing with people in the office. And without realizing, had actually started creating the expectation to people to say, you know, this is a place of where we can go if we've got problems. And in terms of what we do, we're firefighters by trade, so we fix problems and
all the time.
All the time.
Every day. And I can imagine insurance is probably very chaotic.
Yeah, it's organized mess.
Yeah,
organized mess. Yeah.
Okay. So, what would you say is strategic procurement, especially as a female leader? I mean, what I find recently, I don't know if it's a wave that we're just going through.
Yeah.
A lot of private organizations, including public sector, people, you know, they mix roles. One jumps from this department to here. You know, for whatever reason, there's no budget to recruit. You know, you rather take someone and just develop them. And then the very same person, few years down the line, they're now a leader, but they don't have that technical part of being procurement.
Yeah.
So I just want to focus on, you know, in your opinion, since you've grown into the space, what do you think is strategic procurement leadership?
It's a very interesting dynamic that sort of the old definition about us having, you know, capital intense projects and I think that definition has sort of fallen away. I think particularly now, where post catastrophes, where you're looking at unlocking value and really reliant on your supply chain from a value unlocking opportunities. I think for me, it has now turned into more partnerships. I mean, in public sector, you now have a lot more growth in the IPP space.
Yeah.
You also have in the private sector where there's quite a lot of activities that are happening within the global perspective as well. There's a lot more integrated supply chains as we find.
True.
So I believe right now we're in a partnership space. All the collaborative relationships as well. Your profit margins and your savings opportunities, they're no longer independent aspects of any project or of any category management plan. You're almost integrated or dependent on each other for the success of projects.
I like that.
For me, I always look at it, any chaos, there's always a beneficiary. And I found procurement people, for me, really our time to shine was during COVID-19.
Yeah.
And I think we've always said we wanted a seat at the table. For me, that seat was solidified during that period because the globe, the entire world really looked at alternative supply chains, and we were there to answer the call.
I can agree with that because there's a study that Gartner did during COVID. The top 3 performing industries was, of course, IT.
Yeah.
I think health was second,
Yeah.
and then supply chain. Did you see that?
I saw that.
Supply chain was third.
I saw that.
I was like, this is so powerful.
It is amazing. PwC did a similar study as well in terms of just so obviously in terms of my industry. And they looked at forecasts in terms of, I mean, we had already heard of COVID in 2018. And they'd already sort of started looking at world calamities in terms of what then happens when you have ships now that are being hijacked along, national seas, and there's no longer the demarcation of sovereignty. What is being sovereign? We looked at what the definition of war is now, and so those sort of things and forecasts sort of started permeating in terms of what the foremath will happen then after COVID. We already gotten the forewarnings to say there will be calamities that will happen, but we just never understood the extent that it will have. And global leaders, I mean, from a standpoint, to shut down an entire country, for specific and also shut down movement, which I think for me, although we had it was projected, but I don't think at the scale that we had actually understood it to be. I mean, who knew that a superpower like China would have issues in terms of movement of goods? America is going through a lot at the moment, and also just because there's just this forward thinking around our strategic thinking has already been about capital and capital intensive projects. You now had buildings that were vacant for almost 18 months. And you had no
Even now, the
occupancy.
struggle is still there to just try and get back the number of tenants that occupy those buildings now.
Correct.
Post, the pandemic.
So, to my point, that your strategic procurement leadership now, in terms of how to think outside the box, how do I collaborate in getting occupancy into this building? So you now find companies sharing space, competitors sharing space. You find,
and it is becoming an emerging thing here in South Africa.
Exactly, yes, exactly. And it's globally, it's been something that's been there. You find we're now thinking out of the box. I mean, I remember we had thought, 3 years prior to say what would happen if we had people that, because the notion of working from home had already been started in the IT industry, and financial services were reliant on processing cash. And is it safe for people to actually be at home and work on the laptops and processing payments?
And trust was an issue.
Right. No. Hacking and things like that. But then you had this just hard stop, and you had to make it work. So for me, those opportunities sort of gave in birth in terms of a different type of thinking, a different type of leader from a procurement perspective. Our understanding of what a supply chain makeup is in terms of our definitions, what we learned from school and our experiences, you had to unlearn quite a few things to really learn new things. So for me, it's really, I could just summarize and say it's a more collaborative, more integrated partnerships that are heavily reliant on each other. And you now having teams where procurement was, we went away to develop a procurement strategy, and then we went away to hide, came back and ta-da to the business. I've got this wonderful thing for you. You are now co-developing your plans with the business. And as you're going along, because implementation is so finite that fine line between the implementation plan and actually getting the final product right is so finite that you have to get that partnership going and that collaborative effort going.
I absolutely love what you've just said. And what I'm taking away from just analyzing and hearing you well is that each problem, you always find a solution to that problem. And opportunities. That's one thing I'm drawing from your insights, right? COVID was a challenge, and you decided, let me see what is it that we can do as a business to co-create and partner to create solutions. And that is speaking to strategic leadership and procurement, which obviously most of us have been crying for the seat. You had an opportunity to occupy the seat.
Right.
True. So what type of characteristics would you say a female leader needs to have to occupy such positions like head of procurement, senior management? Because a lot of us want these things, but sometimes we don't develop ourselves to be ready for that.
Number one, you have to be authentic. Everybody knows that I'm a mother before everything else. So I bring all of that to work. I think especially people of African descent, we divorce ourselves from ourselves in order for us to sort of fit in this Western culture. that when we have aunts that we rely on as mothers, you create a separation because the Western definition of family is immediate family.
Yes, yes.
I think I've been very fortunate that I've had leaders that have been very authentic in terms of their own leadership styles that has culminated a culture of empathy and authenticity in me. So I bring that to work, number one. So you can't not be a mom. Otherwise, you spend 8 hours or 9 hours in the office and your stress levels on how your children are doing versus in you actually fully being present. So that's the first thing. I think you have to be authentic.
Yeah.
Secondly, I think we definitely have to, being assertive and being strong does not necessarily equate to masculinity. I think that's something else that we sort of misread. Somebody's always said to me, reading the room, so embracing your feminine power is for me important.
Yeah.
So being assertive does not mean that I have to now wear this cloak of masculine energy in order for me to be heard. And at the same time, I also do not need to mother people at work. There is
You need to find a proper balance.
There's a balance. And also, like I said, I spoke about self-awareness. You have to be aware of those things. And then I think what I find a lot in female leaders, the imposter syndrome. We don't believe that we actually have the right to be where we are. So when actually the thing happens, you're surprised by yourself, you surprise yourself.
Yeah.
And you spend a lot of time self-doubt, in the self-doubt box, and you sort of, it takes a while to get out of it. So for me, as a leader, I think being authentic is important. Secondly, understanding your own power, I think is important as well. And also bringing all of that, to the workplace. And development is not only about technical skills, it's also about development as a leader as well. There are tools out there that don't necessarily have to be in the formal sense. Having mentors, having coaches in terms of where you're going, that's quite important. Developing a network of people around you that will actually support.
In fact, this is part of us developing that network. Because I feel like supply chain community lacks a lot of that partnership, collaboration network.
Correct.
We only meet once in a year if you do go to that, Indaba
conference. Yeah.
If you don't, there's nothing else.
I mean, we create, so for example, my friend you had in your previous podcast, we've been friends for a very long time. We're colleagues actually, Duma and I. And we realized that very quickly, like we don't have a network of people that you sort of, as I said, for me, I always go back in terms of where we are. We're in a continent that is a very social continent. So in the Western world, as Africans in jail, we are embracing of each other. You go to Europe, I've gone to Europe a few times, and you're like, sure.
Mind your own business.
Yeah, and trying to greet people and all this. So it's a very different concept. You have to embrace that. And we are social beings. So you see, we go to conferences, we gravitate to each other. But that sort of is inculcated in the culture that you find yourself in. A lot of us were once upon a time one of, you're the first in doing something, or in the first being black female or whatever it is. And it is a lonely journey.
It does.
So if you don't create those networks for yourself, just even it's a pat on the back and somebody like, you're doing fine.
Or sometimes you need that validation.
You need the validation.
That's not lie. Sometimes you do need it.
So the self-validation and the mirror thing, I've got a hint of ADD. So for me, talking to myself in the mirror, really, it's not working.
Wow.
But it's important that you have a network of people that, number one, are your equals. And I think number two, you have people that are going to not be afraid to tell you when you are going in a different role.
Yeah.
At the same time, we always, I'm a very spiritual person, so I always pray for a leader that will actually embrace everything that I come with and more. And you also, develop as you go, hopefully as you're going along. And if you are impacting people's lives positively, you sort of create a family, a pseudo family as you're progressing in your career.
Okay. You know what you've just said resonates with me so much, because one of the ethos of this channel is creating inspirational change for the next generation of leaders.
Yeah.
I'm passionate about driving inspirational change because I do want, when I'm not there, some people must be able to and be confident to go about it, right?
Yeah.
And I think you and I, our voices add to that, to say, these are the tools
Yeah.
some of the pockets you can take, and then you can run with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people are sitting with a wealth of knowledge, like rich, but we really want to tap into it, you know?
True. I think so. I've turned 40 a couple of years ago, and one of the decisions I took so I turned 40 right in the middle of COVID, and it was a very lonely time because I couldn't visit my family and things like that. And I also started questioning my journey in terms of where I am career-wise. And my coach, I remember she saying, you know, a lot of people when they turn 40, they make major decisions. Please don't go and sell, because I always say to people, you know, I can quit this job and go sell mangoes in Hawaii. So please don't go quit your job and go sell mangoes in Hawaii. And I really thought then, if I had to do that, what will happen with this amount of knowledge that I've acquired over 20 years? And I started looking at also this notion of being one-off. And I wanted to create more of Noluthandos. And
That's
for me, I sort of started looking at my internally firstly, because at my own team, and we had a lot of opportunity for us to just talk as people and share experiences. And I find as leaders also, we create this distinction between ourselves and our people. And I want to be recognized as, because I am the head of the department, so the elevation
there
is
must be a distinction.
There must be, and I think that sort of, I wanted to get rid of that. So I started having a lot more practical things that I was doing to create that closeness in the team. So I moved out of my office, I sat with the team. It was a bit nerve-wracking, I could see, because people now are a bit nervous and they were not really free. And I started now doing, like I said, practical things, that eating with the team as well, and enjoying, African food and things like that way in the office.
And you made the change.
I made the change. I made a conscious decision to do that. And that has culminated in being part of a new set of leadership development. So where I work currently, there's a program called NextGo, which is a sort of a next level development of junior leaders that actually would need to shadow our ExCo. I also became part of the community-based initiatives around developing young people. I'm very passionate about the female child because I recognize myself a lot in our young girls. At some point, I was this confused 16-year-old that didn't know.
And this person to just hold your hand
to show you where you're going, and integrating all of that. So you needed academics, but you needed also emotional support. A lot of us coming from the communities that we come from, we have a lot of emotional issues that we bring along with us, and teaching people how to work with those traumas and those things that, because you bring those, and that for me culminates into these kind of leaders that we then translate to. I lead a team of I think 60% is men, and half the time you hear like, oh, female leaders. We were very nervous to work with you because we know female leaders can turn into monsters and emotional, or they get.
I mean, I've had a terrible female leader before in my life.
And you do have, because I think you also get sensitive to the fact that if you don't deal with the baggage, a lot of us bring a lot of baggage with us into the office. So, for example, what people perceive as aggression, it could be somebody dealing with hurt and saying, I was not heard, right? So for me now in this role that
you must hear
me. So you recognize that, and I'm also sort of trained in psychology as well. So that helps as well to identify certain behaviors. Go, okay, then that's a trauma that I'm dealing with. That
So what has been your challenges? Just maybe top 2 challenges that you've experienced in the procurement specifically. Because remember, when you're in that boardroom with some of the ExCos and divisional directors, they put pressure.
First one is proving value. It's not easy to walk into a room and you tell a cost center owner that you're actually making mistakes, and to also because you have to show. It's a show and tell. I always say it's showmanship. Because you have to get up there and you have to show that these are the assessments that I've done in your business. I've done this background check, I've done that. And these are the things that aren't working in your division. And it's very difficult to have leaders that are not self-aware, because then it's almost like a finger-pointing exercise that you show me off in front of my colleagues. So, and we make those mistakes as we're coming up in our careers. For example, that I could have maybe just pulled the man aside to say, look, I'm going to do this, and But as you go along, I think for me, it's one proving value that I am here to support you, actually not become your enemy. And secondly, being able to also sustain that value, I think that for me it became a bit more of a challenge. As I said, as you grow, you realize it's more of a partnership because we are intertwined in this result. And then secondly is to create, I think more practical is a work-life balance. We unfortunately have to work a lot more to...
And also insurance is very demanding.
It's very demanding industry. You have to work a lot more to get to the end result. And you get obsessed with a specific outcome. And that would demand lesser time with either the team, lesser time with the family, lesser time being able to focus on other things and your obsession with this one ultimate goal. But the results obviously would justify the means, and the end.
You have to deal with the guilt. You know, Siba, I was in another event, and she was the main speaker, and said, you know, I dealt with guilt so much because she's a high performer by nature. She wants to achieve a lot of things, and she's a mom and, and a wife and auntie and whatnot. And for a long time, she carried this guilt that if I'm not here, I don't feel like I'm doing enough there. If I'm not there, I don't feel like I'm doing enough there. Did you experience the guilt in this balance?
I still do. I call it opportunity cost. So I choose to have a different name for it. I call it an opportunity cost. So when you actually assessing your opportunity cost, you look at, okay, so I'm about to embark in this. This is what I'm actually... You negotiate with yourself. I negotiate with the family. And the amount of time I spend, I try and make up for it. The most you can, injustice you can do for yourself to dismiss it that it's not there. Acknowledge it, because it is going to be there as long as, unfortunately, we work in these industries that we've loved so much. It's an opportunity cost. But as you're getting mature in your role, the opportunities to lessen that opportunity costs present themselves. So, for example, I am now in a position where I'm able to negotiate. If my son has got a soccer game midweek, I sort of can manage my diary now. And I feel very blessed that I can do that, and I understand that's a privilege that many don't have. So you as you're growing, I know a lot of us in the industry sort of don't really have that. So I feel very blessed that I have that opportunity to do that. But the injustice is to also the adverse that you don't acknowledge that. But the guilt is there. As any female, it's a challenge. If on a Saturday you've got something to do and there's a family thing that you can't attend because work has got to be pressing. But you do what you need to do to make ends meet.
That's true. So I want us to just move to another section of our conversation, where we're just talking supply development. Because you are a head of procurement, right? You are faced with having to have KPIs. You said about preferential procurement, transformation. Do you think procurement does enough justice to develop supplies and see them through being developed, especially startups?
Yes and no. I am very fortunate that I'm in an industry where we embrace EMEs. So largely our panel beta spaces and our contractor space, because we deal with people's homes. You deal with people's cars. So those assets need to be managed in a specific way. So the panel beating industry largely consists of EMEs. Similarly to the building space, you largely focusing on EMEs as well. However, the acquisition of EMEs is a very high number that then compromises the acquisition of QSEs. So it's a fine balance in being able to do that, because you've got to see EMEs graduating to becoming EMEs and QSEs creating space and becoming generic suppliers. And it is a challenge that from an industry perspective that we have from specifically in that particular space. There is quite a lot of challenge from an HDI perspective that, we know in South Africa, the dynamics of people that buy insurance are very small. We only have 20% of our population that actually has vehicle insurance. So 80% of people that are out there don't have insurance.
And we all do, what do you call it, garage purchase?
So that's another thing.
Apparently, South Africans are literally only getting after the fact.
Yes.
Then you take insurance.
Typically we buy insurance because we have to. As we leave the garage, you make that phone call, then you cancel the policy. So as we're seeing the weather changes now, it's the severity of our weather changes are creating an opportunity for people to rethink insurance products. I mean, we saw in Cape Town last week the gale force winds were ripping people's roofs and ceilings off.
Only then they want to take more
Then
insurance.
now you know, and KZN has been hit with floods since 2021. So there is for me a notion of the spaces that you occupy. So the call for insurance is that you need to be proactive in the industries that you in the communities that you serve. So the opportunity for us to recruit builders in a specific township is highly there. For us to also encourage panel beaters in specific communities to actually become part of our community is there. So the yes part is that. But the unfortunate part is that the people that buy insurance don't look like you and me. Therefore, the challenge has always been in having black people to participate in the spaces they don't live in. So,
but can I also challenge that fact?
Yeah.
I don't think insurance industry do a lot of socialization from the impact of these programs that has been done in the communities. I mean, there are other organizations that are very, public about transforming, EMEs and these programs, and you see the brand they out there. I think even if it is done, it's probably not magnified in a sense that you actually, then you can start understanding the very same community must actually take insurance.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
I think there's a lot. I mean, again, it's a mix because I'm in the industry, I might be biased.
Yeah.
But there is a lot that we're doing as an industry to create awareness and education about insurance. I mean, personally, whenever I go and meet my family, it's a message in whatever gathering I have that I try and push.
Your life cover.
So more than that.
Okay.
So, I mean, I was actually telling my son now the other day that, when we grow up, and as soon as you get your first salary, you're told, get a funeral policy because you are not going to be buried by, So that for me already tells us that our mothers and our families are very aware that you need insurance, but it's more about self. Now, from a property perspective, I find the challenge then becomes that it's a trade-off, because what you call a grad purchase. Because the results are not immediate, right? And it's not a topic that immediately resonates with us. So when you're buying a car, for example, secondhand, people will go, but it's not a brand new car, so I don't need to insure it. Or if I live in a flat, I don't actually need to insure my contents. Only at the time when the incident happens, then we go, oh, okay.
Actually,
I should actually. I remember we did a drive my first time in Soweto, and we're doing a walk around with my previous company. And he had a conversation with one of the ladies in the community, and Mama came out of the house and he asked her, so, Mama, do you have insurance? And Mama's like, no, I don't have insurance. And he asked why, and he said, no, because I've got my whistle, so if I need people, I just blow my whistle, the community comes out. That dog, that's my security, so I'm fine. So our context of insurance is very different. But yes, I think consumer education, there's a lot more that we definitely can do as an industry. But I think also from a public sector perspective, I think government, globally, we know insurance is a mandatory requirement, especially for public liability. That it's important for people that drive a vehicle to have insurance, because if you get involved in an accident, there's certain processes that have to kick in.
Yeah. All right. So I want us to move to another section. Yeah. We have a small game we play in this.
Okay.
In this podcast.
Yeah.
So it is called a Procurement Folly Challenge. So we just want you to think outside the box quickly in 30 seconds. Can I tell you, only 2 people have actually answered these questions in 30 seconds. Most of them will take a minute or more. So you need to answer it in quick, but you're very eloquent, so I think you'll do well.
Okay. I hope so.
So tell me something.
Yeah.
What was your first embarrassing moment being in the procurement leadership?
I broke a heel. I was heading to a meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so as I walked into the boardroom, my heel just... Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so
So you were super embarrassed.
I was,
Like, oh, sorry.
so I mean, imagine this, not even limping, you're hopping.
Oh my
to the
God.
front. So somebody just felt sorry for me, and they pulled the chair and they said, no, you can present sitting down.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, no. And I'm not a tall person, so I just took off my shoes and I stood in the front.
Okay. Second one, if you had to stand in front of thousands and millions of people, what is the one thing you would say that you embrace about procurement?
It is a very fulfilling career to have. You literally, I've been a procurement person for over 20 years. I've not been bored a day in my life.
Wow.
There's always something to do. There's always something to do.
It's a very fulfilling
It's very fulfilling career.
Okay. All right. Last question. If you had to define procurement as a metaphor, what comes to your mind?
Okay. Firefighter. This is a
Firefighter.
Firefighter.
Okay.
We are literally firefighters by trade. You manage. I mean, think about it. You manage a situation when situations happen.
That's very true, actually.
You provide leadership in a process of chaos. You water down situations where people get emotive about certain topics that are not emotive. You need to be calm across any situation that you have. You must have the tools for the job. So firefighters are trained to manage fires. So you have to
CPRing all the time.
All the you have to have answers as well. All the time. In any emergency, people they need to ask you, and you have to have answers. So I literally, when I talk about procurement, I always say I'm a firefighter by trade, because that's what we do. That's what we do all the time. And I admire, the fact that there's a lot more young people that I see that are coming into the industry. That's admirable.
It is.
But we cannot absolutely show the glamour part of it. There's also the dark side that comes with it. And for me, I always try and create that self-awareness. I mean, if you think about firefighters, there's dangers in the job, but there's also the reward that comes with it. It's very fulfilling.
No, thank you so much, Thando. Can I call you Thando?
Thando, it's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just in closing, what would you like people to know about just being in leadership?
Being a leader in the procurement space calls for a lot more authentic leaders, honest leadership. There's quite in both public and private sector, a bit of an outcry at the moment for that. We definitely need a lot more formidable leaders that will, whose authenticity will not be questioned. You are in it for the cause and not necessarily for other things. Okay. We are also called, I always say leadership is a calling. You are charged literally with the responsibility of managing people's lives and careers. As leaders, we can either build or destroy careers. True. And if you don't necessarily embrace that gift, you will make mistakes and that will be dire for people's careers. We are also called to create opportunity. Okay. I always make examples about people cutting the ladder as soon as they get up the ladder. So I always sort of remind myself and affirm myself in that way to say, don't cut the ladder today. So I always try and find space to share knowledge, to encourage people, to create opportunities for my team to try and think out of the box. That it really becomes a practice that you do daily. And then lastly, I also believe in being able to work not in a linear way. I think as we found, as we see, as we getting this very interesting dynamics that are happening in the world now. If you create a very linear structure, it limits opportunities for any other development in your process in becoming a leader or solidifying your position as a leader. Yeah. So your main aim in any game that you play, you've got to realize, number one, what am I in for? So every day I sort of have a plan. I have a daily plan, I have a weekly plan. I like planning. So I have a daily plan, I have a weekly plan, I have a monthly plan, I have a yearly plan.
Sure.
The idea of having a daily plan. So there's a book that I read written by a sailor to say, at sea we deal with a lot. So I have a day, one thing an objective a day to at least one thing I do in my plan is to make my bed. Okay. So when I come back, my bed is made. I feel comfortable. It's the one thing I've got control over today. Oh, okay. Just making up my bed. Yeah. So for me, I almost have a knowledge of having 3 things. If I have done in my plan, I planned for 5 things, I do 3, I deserve that glass of wine.
Okay.
And then in the week, obviously, there's another plan and all of that. So, and you assess your plan, and not be too hard on yourself when things don't work out, right? And lastly, I think it's okay to also acknowledge that we are not made out of iron. We are people.
We're not perfect people.
We're not perfect people.
Yeah.
So you are going to make mistakes, and hopefully, in your calculations, the mistake is not dire. But it is possible that you make the wrong decision, but the recovery period needs to be very short.
Just on that note about, making mistakes and not, beating yourself down because you made a mistake. From all the mistakes you've made, what is the one thing you can say that helped you come out? That mindset that you have, so you're not staying in that.
So work is not about you. It's not you. We like marrying ourselves to jobs. Like I said, the recovery period of, okay, it has happened, calamity, we people, we emotive, so you deal with the emotion, recover, and have a plan of getting yourself out of it. Because for number one, accountability when you make a mistake is important. There's no time for blaming. You need to take accountability and move on.
True.
And number two, it's not about you. So we're here to do a job. Something didn't go right. How do we recover? How do we move on? This has got absolutely nothing to do with Noluthando as a person, but to do with Noluthando as the head of procurement or whatever function that I hold. And it's also, I think, the third most important thing as a leader, you have to affirm people. When something goes wrong, there is nothing worse than the leader collapsing with the people as the thing happens.
Like, oh, you guys, what have you done?
And we all cry together.
Yeah.
It's important for someone to step up. It's in any calamity, somebody must step up. Yes, guys, it has happened, but look, let's look forward. It's for me, those 3 things have really helped me in my mistake journey. Acknowledging when I make a mistake, how long I take to recover determines how quick I am to resolve the problem. Because if a fire has happened, there's no time if you spend a lot of time in paralysis analysis, you are not going to solve the problem.
True. You end up being paralyzing.
Paralyzing, even worse, right?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Thank you. All right. I like the fact that you're a planner because we give our guests here my everyday procurement planner. I'm not sure if you're aware that this is one of my babies.
Oh, okay.
So it is called my everyday procurement.
Oh, thank you.
So that is for you, just to say thank you for giving us your time.
Oh,
it is a procurement planner that is inspired by what we spoke about. There are nuggets of, daily nuggets basically that will help you as you're, So because you're a scheduler, I love it. Because it's got daily, weekly, monthly.
Thank you. Okay. So I walk around, I think anyone knows me, I always have one of these in my hand because I also find as I'm getting a bit more older, I forget. I don't know what that is. I just get into a forgetful period.
I'm also there. I guess my age is getting to the 40s.
I call it a pregnancy brain. So I always have a book. So thank you for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
It has been such a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
I think we should have you back here for our Women's Month episode. But should we just leave it there for now?
Yeah.
Just last words?
Really, I'd like to call on the industry to say we need to have a bit more authenticity now in what we do and a bit of integrity. I think that will go a long way. But stay at it, firefighters. Let's stay on putting out those fires.
All right. Thank you so much, Noluthando.
Thank you for having me, Rata. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We were talking about strategic leadership. Please continue to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys on the next episode. Cheers.